All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and squirrels, welcome to David and Alex's Totally Rad podcast. That's totally not a podcast at all. We're your hosts. I'm Alex, and this guy.
Which guy? Me? This guy?
You.
This guy? This guy is David Harrell. Hello, everybody.
Hey, David Harrell. David and I are on a journey to find others like us who may be a little different, but have used their uniqueness to become a mega mentors and role models here at Camp No Limits. So tune in with us as we deep dive into getting to know some of these superstars. What's up, David?
Superstars, they are, Alex Barone. We have talked to superstars, but we have, oh man, the hostess with the mostest today, the CEO with the most flow. I don't even know how to describe the big kahuna-ish. Not even the ish, just the big kahuna. Perfectly. There's no ish about it. It's the kahuna, the big kahuna.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about the one, the only. Same time, David.
Mary Leighton. Yes, that is who is here today. I know you're excited. We're excited to be back here on Facebook Live. For those of you who are just scrolling, I don't know, because you're like, it's 8:05 on a Thursday, and you're just scrolling through, and you're like, oh, what's Camp No Limits Live about? And then you see these, yakkos, David and Alex. You're like, what are these guys doing? Well, we have this thing called David and Alex's Totally Rad podcast. That is totally not a podcast. It's kind of just like an interview that we've been doing. So we've gotten some great interviews with mentors and other folks that have been with us and connected with us with Camp No Limits. You can check those out on our YouTube page. I strongly suggest you subscribe to the YouTube page and keep checking back with us, and we'll be coming live as well throughout this the rest of this year. I do want to thank, because we have, to have a Totally Not podcast, we have to have Totally Not sponsors. So I do have a big sponsor for tonight. We got to give them a shout out real quick. And the sponsor tonight is spatulas, the most underrated of your utensil arsenal. Spatulas, very important. They do a lot of work, a lot of unseen work. They're kind of like the blue collar of the cooking utensil. They get everything done. They don't have a lot of hype about them. They don't have a lot of, glitz and glitter, things like that. They just get there, they get the work done. And that's what we're about. We're about getting work done. And today's guest, she's gotten some amazing work done because we wouldn't be here without her. So without any further ado, let's bring in our fearless leader, Miss Mary Leighton.
Mary Leighton, everybody. Mary Leighton.
Hello, Mary Leighton. This is kind of like this is like my new thing. It's like I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going on tonight.
Your fingers.
It's like the finger nub dance. Mary, I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you for joining a podcast that you've made possible.
I'm so excited. This is so exciting.
Oh, nice.
To be with both of you. And everyone who's watching. Hopefully a few people are watching.
I think we have a few people watching, and we do have and we definitely have like a delay of Mary's voice, which is awesome. So it's technical. We've known that the internet has, I think, been part of this whole pandemic with us. So we'll have like a little bit of a Mary kind of like, and then I went to Florida. But then,
Godzilla.
That's just how it's going to go. So Mary, to start us off a little, we've really asked a lot of our mentors as we've done these kind of like what life was like for them as a kid. So tell us a little bit about your life there growing up in the great state of Maine.
Well, where to even begin? So I grew up on a farm, and we had a few cows and some other animals on the farm. And I was very attached to them and always wanted to take care of them. So it was not really probably the best thing for me, as we would often, the animals would have to go on to their next homes. So that was really difficult. But I think it really instilled the need for hard work, and it's kind of the job that's never done. So I think that's where that started, and just wanting to know that there's more out there. And, you know, growing up in Maine, it's very cold, and it's sometimes could be known as being kind of a harsh lifestyle, especially surviving all winter. But, it really instills a lot of values for being ambitious, and for wanting to do more and be part of this community that's out there. And, working with animals and working with just in that setting, it's just one of those places where you learn to kind of get that passion and caring for life that surrounds you. It's very beautiful, and you have such a beautiful place to live and to be. I think it just kind of instills some of those values into you.
What's really interesting about that answer is it reminds me of Kevin Carroll. Actually, when we talked with Kevin, who's a prosthetist and a big friend of Camp No Limits, and he talked about growing up around a lot of animals and how that sort of gave him a sense of empathy and awareness of life, awareness of helping others in a way. He told the story of having to, basically saving a cow and then starting to make, little almost prosthetic legs for animals, or like little things to help, even as he was a young person. I know if anyone follows you on the gram or your Insta, whatever the kids call it, they know you really love horses. But were sort of all animals a part of your life growing up, or was it were horses, obviously horses being a big thing, but was it kind of a big mix, or were there some that were just sort of your favorites?
Well, we primarily had those animals, and then I really wanted to have a goat. So much to my dad's, displeasure of not wanting to add to that, I did end up with 2 goats, and, they were just family pets, and, they're really fun animals to have, guinea pigs and rabbits and cats and dogs. And it took a while to get a horse, actually. So as some of you know, there's a story about having to convince my dad that I wanted to get a horse. So we grew up with 150 acres, and, most of the neighbors around town had horses or enjoying that sort of lifestyle. And, I didn't have a horse, and I was just dying for a horse. So after convincing and trying to convince him, my mom tried to give a little plug of, this really too bad she doesn't have a horse. Everyone else has horses. We have all this land. Like, why can't we just have a horse? So his, thinking, I think, was that I'd give up on it if I had to have this kind of ultimatum. Like, if you take care of this cow, why don't you teach this cow how to ride? And then we'll talk about it if you stay focused and do that. So I accepted the challenge because I was really determined that I really wanted a horse, and trained this little cow. Had the cow, as the cow grew up, I then, got on and started riding the cow. So, it's really not a very fun story when you get to high school or even middle school, because, quite honestly, that's not a popular thing to be doing. So, it really, I think it really instilled that you definitely can be different, and, being unique is pretty awesome. And I think that it really instilled into me that having that perseverance to to see something all the way through. So
Yeah.
it was not until that I was like, you know what, I guess I need a saddle because it's hard, riding bareback all the time. Can we figure out if I can get a saddle for this cow? That was finally the point that my mom at least helped give me a bigger plug and was like, come on, So
we can't have little Mary with a saddling up the cow and going around trying to teach the cow to jump over barrels. Oh my, that would be next. Oh my
Mary,
gosh.
at what point did you go from like transitioning from saddling cows and guinea pigs and goats to want to working with people?
I was a very quiet kid. I wanted to be my first, I really thought I was going to become a jockey. So that was my first love. And then I began wanting to be a veterinarian. So that led to spending a lot of time with the veterinary clinic that was nearby. There was a wonderful vet there. He allowed me to ride around with him on my vacations, and we would go doing house calls and hang out with him in the clinic, which was really, really fun. And it, just, I think being really quiet for me was hard. I just didn't have the confidence. And, I think I had a lot of passion for things, but, that confidence of actually really communicating with people and being part of that was pretty hard. So I think it really started with the animals first. And then when I started to kind of gain a little bit of confidence, I think, I was like, well, what could I do that would incorporate kind of both? And ironically, I had attended a conference that was talking about hippotherapy, so therapeutic horseback riding. And I was like, oh my gosh, here it is. I could work with people and with animals, and, they would see how important that connection is. And then realizing hippotherapy, the people that were working with those, with the people that were utilizing this therapeutic tool were physical and occupational therapists. And so then that kind of led into that field. So that would be where it began.
That's cool. I don't think I knew that that's sort of where that kind of led you in. And so did you stay in school locally, or did you go away to school for... So this was this sort of like in college? Did it sort of, you start like undergrad, sort of like, this is the direction I'm going, or?
Now we're really getting an echo, so let me see how we can do that. So no, I actually was pretty young when I actually ended up getting married right out of high school. I was going to go to school locally, but did not. As he was in the military. So I ended up out in the Midwest starting out. And then I did come back and finish my undergraduate in Springfield, Mass.
Cool. And then, so you do undergrad and then you go into occupational therapy school, is that correct? Or is that kind of like it's almost like a master's program? Well, it wasn't that long ago I went to school, but I guess it has been. So it was actually a bachelor's degree. Right. So
before they transitioned to a master's.
Oh, okay. So great. So it was a bachelor's in OT, and then from there, that's kind of you kind of started into like clinical work from there.
Yes. Yep.
And now you are a doctor, Mrs. Leighton.
It's true. You are.
An honorary doctorate.
An honorary doctorate, which is amazing. I also have an honorary doctorate bestowed upon me by you as an actual honorary doctor of a doctor of hard knocks. So, so this sort of, I guess, leads us into a story that we've heard, but I definitely want our folks that are watching that may not know this story. If you could, so you kind of you found your way into occupational therapy. You started kind of going into clinical, and then this is sort of your connection into how this whole thing with Canada Limit started. So can you tell us a little bit about that story? And I think Nicholas was the young man you worked with, and kind of give us a sense of how this whole thing began.
Yeah, so one of my first jobs, I was actually working in Massachusetts, and working in long-term care, well, a skilled nursing facility and also long-term care. And I also had done one of my clinicals in a school district. So I had worked, I was doing a few hours there as well. So those were my first jobs. But back at that point, they had done a lot of changes with insurance and things like that. So Medicare changes. And so I was working with a contract, and of course that contract ended up getting cut. So it was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I ended up, the thought was eventually moving back to Maine at that point. It just was a little sooner than I had kind of envisioned. But anyways, I looked close to where I grew up, and there happened to be a job it was in pediatrics. So, and it was really local. So went and checked it out and gave it a shot. So I really, it was really one of my very first jobs. And still had the idea of doing the hippotherapy, the therapeutic horseback riding, and did actually incorporate that with some of our patients at the time. But I started working a lot in schools, and the private clinic therapy corner, it was primarily a sensory integrative clinic. However, we had a lot of kids with physical and cognitive issues as well. And of course, my interest had always been more into the physical differences. And, so one of my very first patients that came into the clinic when I was working was actually missing all 4 limbs. And I was like, I don't know what to do with him. But he came in and brought him into the therapy room, and I just really kind of just observed him. And, there was other kids playing that day, and I was sitting here trying to figure out what kind of standardized testing I could do. What was I going to do? And so I had this plan that I thought I could do. And he just came in, and we had like a slide and swing and some other things there. And he just climbed up the slide, slid down with no prosthetics on at all, just sort of, almost commando crawled up the slide, slid down. He was 3 years old at the time. And, picked up a ball, threw it across the room, stacked some blocks up, and, just had the biggest smile on his face. Eager to just try to figure out anything that was in there. So whatever it was, it was almost that, he was just going to figure it out. And maybe he just needed a little help along the way. So I was really inspired by that, and as I worked with a few other clients who had some limb differences, they're all very different, but there was one thing that kind of stood out was just, as they got older, some of my older patients really, it was that confidence and kind of sitting back and just really worrying about what other people were going to say or do. And I think for me, that lack of confidence, I think I had as a child, kind of, I recognized it. And, granted, I wasn't missing any limbs myself and didn't, wasn't completely understanding of that. I wanted to learn, and I wanted to be part of that. And I wanted to help figure out how to make them be able to manage in this world and adapt. So, I mean, that's what OT is all about. So it really just became a passion. And I just really wanted to see, especially for the first patient I worked with, for him to know that there are other people out there like him. I just wanted to figure that out.
Yeah,
I think it's so.
Go ahead, Alex. I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead, David.
No, Alex, you.
Okay, I will. I was going to say that I think it's crazy that sometimes these things that we think are like upsetting, like to take it back a little bit when you said your contract was cut short and you had to go back to Maine, and then if it wasn't for that, then you want to pursue that pediatric setting and been included in that, and that kind of started its own chapter. Then if that didn't happen, maybe Can't No Limits wouldn't have happened. So these little things that can be so crazy and tragic in the moment are actually stepping stones for a bigger thing that happens in our lives. I think it's just so crazy.
Yeah.
And I think for me, you know, like personally, there was a lot of changes happening. You know, obviously I didn't stay married. That was a big influencer of my life, being so young. And, you know, I think actually from the kids that I worked with, how they were able to adapt. And I was really worrying because I was going to be getting divorced at a very young age. And all of my friends and all of those people were now, you know, people I had gone to school with were now getting married. They were starting to have kids. They were kind of in that transition. And I was sitting there kind of like, you know, I didn't do everything. I didn't follow that pattern that same way everyone else did. And for me, I mean, I went to school and I did all that on time, but it was that whole other aspect of life that I thought I had to do in that order that just kind of threw me for a loop. And, you know, it really was you know, the patients I was working to, you know, their life is never going to be that synchronous movement of doing things exactly the way you think that they're supposed to happen. So I think I was driven by that of knowing like, you know, like, what am I worried about? Like life goes on, you have to figure out how to adapt. So I think that was really kind of that pivotal moment for me that, you know, there's more to life than worrying about kind of those minuscule little things of trying to be perfect, you know, and follow this certain, these steps that you think you're supposed to do. So I think it was at that point that was really a driving factor. And then I now had this other focus to focus on, and it became this, you know,
I think,
and that's where all my energy went to.
Yeah. I think it's also interesting too, you know, as you started talking about your childhood and kind of the way you grew up and on that farm, and it's not an easy place to grow up. You know, it's not, you know, suburbia. You've got your chores, you got you know, all the stuff that goes with some of that tough stuff, getting through the winter, et cetera, et cetera. And the determination, like you learned as a kid, to see something through, and then seeing that determination in that young kid saying, I'm just going to go have fun and be a kid and want to get up that ladder. I'm going to figure out how to do it. I think that parallel is really cool too, because I think it was something that was within yourself, that you had that kind of same determination to adapt and to follow through and to make sure you move forward. So I think that's cool. Now, so you started this camp, and you talk a little bit. We talk a lot about. You started with 4 campers. When you started it, did you think this? You know, what did you have a vision? What was the sort of vision when you started, and then how did that begin to adapt and change? As we're talking about adapting and always moving forward in life, always throwing your curveballs. So what was that first vision like, and how has that kind of changed kind of early on?
Yeah, so it was actually another occupational therapist. I was fortunate, the prosthetist that I was working with in Maine had actually invited me to a couple conferences, and then the upper extremity specialists, actually with Hanger, had invited me to this conference in Connecticut. And so I'd met this other OT, Bambi, and still have contact with her now. And she just, you know, was really inspired that I had so many patients, which equated to 3, I think. So it wasn't a whole lot, but she, you know, it was just kind of that comment that she just made. She's like, you know, you ought to just do a camp. And then she just happened to mail me this CD in the mail, or DVD. Well, I guess you'd call it a CD back then. And it was of this camp of some children in Sweden that had got together to do this. They all had myoelectric prosthetics. And she's like, you should just do a camp. So I looked at that and was just really like, you know, hey, why not? So it's just really interesting because it was myself and the PTs and OTs that I worked with at Therapy Corner. And it was like, hey, you know, you want to just come do this camp? And so they were all in, you know, we had fun working at Therapy Corner every day. So it was like, well, we can hang out and on this beautiful lake in Maine. And just have a good time. So of course, being, you know, PTs and OTs, like the driving force behind it was that therapeutic value of what we've learned in school and why our profession is so important. So that became an integral part of what we would do. But I think it was that very first camp, we had 4 kids. And for one of the kids to say that it was better, you know, like spending those 3 days at camp in Maine that year were better than going to Disney World was pretty magical and impactful. That you realize how much value that had. So then as we kind of enjoyed that weekend and really just, it was more really, we realized how much it was about just being together. That became a big part of the empowerment part of what we did. And then as we, you know, I'd trying to figure out how to actually create a nonprofit, you know, that was a couple years later. So we just did the camp the first 2 years. And then I was like, okay, well, this is something that we actually have to create a 501c3. It was like, well, what is a 501c3? I don't know. So then as we researched that, I actually had reached out to this small business group in Maine, and I actually still have contact with him as well. But he came in and sort of mentored me on how to set up the nonprofit. And, you know, you have to make a mission statement and a vision statement. And, you know, we kind of gave this worksheet of what to work through. So we sat there looking at it, and, you know, our mission is the same mission that we had then. And quite honestly, I think I'm pretty proud of that because I think it still very much encompasses everything that we do and and where we want to go. So it's really about the education, empowerment, and support. And I think that's what we're about. It's about all of that. And so it's kind of neat to kind of see this vision start where you're not really quite sure what you want to do, or, you know, being 20, you know, early 20s and trying to start this camp. But, you know, just knowing the value of empowering people and understanding that potential. So that still resonated then, and I think it resonates now.
Yeah, and that is kind of big picture thinking, to be fresh out of school and early 20s, like you said, and kind of see the vision of what camp is today, and that you grew it from just those 4 campers to what it is today, Mary. That's huge. And like David said, you've continued to adapt over all these years and even through a pandemic like COVID and make the camp a virtual thing where we can still all stay connected and grow our mission of educating, empowering, and supporting. So like, what today still drives you to keep it going and expanding?
You know, I think over the years we've had a lot of ups and downs and times where it's like, you know, you kind of lose motivation a little bit. But then we'd have camps and you'd come back and you know, kind of be inspired and reinvigorated for what you do. But I think what I've learned over the years, you know, I have, you know, some of my pastimes. I don't know if we're going to talk about that, but obviously a lot of people know that I enjoy football, and, you know, all fun and games about Tom Brady, but you knew I was going to bring him into this conversation. You know, obviously you can't deny his drive to succeed and drive to follow his passion. You know, besides my personal affection for him, you know, it's that business or that passion that he has to do what he loves. So I find that very inspiring, and, you know, relating that to my life, but also, you know, looking at other people. I recently watched Crip Camp, thanks to David Harrell for recommending it, even though I wasn't paying attention at the time, but I did watch it recently. And then, so there's the one lady on there, Judith, was really a big proponent of pushing and getting ADA regulations and the 504, and, you know, really pushing for disability rights and inclusion and understanding all that. And one of the quotes from that was, what we saw at that camp, for those of you who don't know, it was really about this camp that happened in the 50s and 60s for people with disabilities. It was kind of a one-of-a-kind type thing back then. But what we saw at that camp was that our lives could be better. The fact of the matter is that what you don't, oh wait, no, I'm not even reading the one. The fact of the matter is that you don't have anything to strive for if you don't know it exists. So I think it was a pretty powerful statement, and it kind of gave that, reinvigoration again. That what we do at Camp No Limits is extremely important. And to see that this camp that happened in the 50s and 60s really encouraged all these people to really push to make sure that their voices were heard and that they were seen. And so I think for me that really did kind of reopen my eyes again, so I think it's really about educating, and seeing the other leaders and seeing other people that are out there. So I really enjoyed that more recently from the pandemic, and realizing, being able to impact even one life is huge. Like, you never know that kind of those seeds that you're planting, whatever you can do just to kind of even change one person's perspective is huge. We have this huge community, and the last couple of years have been really difficult. And I think it's just so important for people to see things through other people's experiences and other people's opinions and understanding that. So I think by coming together at camp, and camp isn't always just even about the campers. We include the whole family. We include all the volunteers, PTs and OTs. So I think for each of those people to kind of be able to be in that community, it really is such an important part of understanding how to create inclusion and diversity in our world. So, a lot of times there's been so many people that say, being at Camp No Limits for that weekend is like the small utopia where everyone is accepted and everyone is family, and we just all strive to push each other and rise up. So I think that's really huge. So I think what I've been doing, during this pandemic, is trying to educate myself again, and even looking back at history at some pretty amazing people, like Helen Keller, and just other people who have overcome so much. I think that's really important to do, to kind of push yourself even as a leader, or to keep pushing forward, if that makes sense.
Of course. I think that's kind of what I think it's sort of the theme of again, it's your shirt, which is sort of our theme for the whole, the 2020, and even as we're kind of moving into 2021, it's constantly adapting, but it's always moving forward. It's always continuing to try to see those goals move ahead with you, and that's really all we can do. We can only move forward, but yeah, I think that's an absolutely brilliant way to do it. I know we have a couple questions, but I do, because we have a little bit of a latency with Facebook, I'm going to go ahead and tell folks that are watching, if you guys have any questions for Mary, just put them in the chat, and we'll take a few minutes to see if there are any additional questions as well. But Alex had another couple questions.
It'll be a two-part question while we're waiting for our 13 million audience members to type their questions. One, I think would be awesome for everybody to know is, what's your favorite thing you love about camp? And the second part of that is, what's your vision for camp 5 years from now?
My favorite part about camp is really, especially when new families come, and it's kind of, there's multiple things, I guess. When the new families come and they really come in not really knowing what to expect, but to see them sort of come out of their shell, see their camper sort of look around. And I think it's that look that they get when they realize, like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. And to kind of like see that kind of sense of relief happen was really cool. but then when they make those bonds and those lifelong connections, we have families that have been coming, since we started, and to see them grow up and make those connections, watch them and watch them continue to have those friendships even outside of camp is huge. But watching them grow up and be successful and be kind of the voice for the next generation is pretty amazing. So I think it's that magic that you feel. That's my favorite part.
And the second part of that was where do you see this in 5 years? I don't know.
I wasn't sure because for a second there I thought I was on this podcast by myself for a second there. Yeah.
Hey, you know what's funny though? We've gone like 35 minutes with this echo that's been driving Mary crazy, and I realized there's a button or a thing I have that's like echo cancellation. That I clicked,
oh my gosh!
And I clicked it, and I was like, "Oh, we could have solved that problem a long time ago." Sorry, guys.
That's so you. That's so you, David.
It made it hard to concentrate because I kept hearing myself again. So then I forget what I couldn't.
But this is better now.
Yes.
All right. Well.
All right. So in 5 years from now, well, hopefully we are. We've adapted so much from COVID that I hope we're not sitting here still completely online. Which I definitely think we've seen a lot of advantages from being online and the connections we've made worldwide has been amazing, and we'll want to continue that at some level. But I think that has only kind of inspired us for more. We've added in an education series, which is really cool for our healthcare professionals, and a lot of other events to kind of connect everyone on that level. And so I think that part of it has been huge and powerful. But in 5 years from now, whether we continue to add more camps, continue to grow, it's just impacting more people, however many people we can impact and continue to inspire, I think worldwide, whether we venture, in all 50 states, has to be seen yet. But I think it's really just impacting as many people as we can, tripling in size.
Wow. A triple. Wow. Like a Tom Brady throwing a Super Bowl trophy from a boat.
Yeah.
Kind of triple growth.
You got to take a plunge. You got to take a chance.
I guess that's true. You gotta take chances. Perhaps he has enough money he could just buy a new one, I guess, if Gronk or whoever slipped out of his hands. I was like, oh my gosh. You gotta get some, I don't know, did they talcum powder those hands to catch it? Impressive it didn't drop to the bottom of whatever the bay. Although bay. You're there now. You would have been like, Benny, come on, get your swimsuit, let's go, we're going to get Tom's trophy.
I should have taken my inflatable kayak over there,
where were you and Karen Hendrick? Where's Karen Hendrick? She's not kayaking out there trying to be part of the parade.
Tom Brady.
Clifton getting a free ride from Karen saying, Justine was like, Tom Brady, my name's Justine. She has a loud voice. We've covered that on the podcast. No questions are coming in. So, Mary, I think you like Tom Brady, have answered all your critics. You've answered all of your fans.
Yeah.
And
Tom Brady took people away.
Yeah.
Somebody must have a question.
I know. Adrian Demesis doesn't have a question? How is that possible? She's like a scientist.
Yeah, really, Adrian. She was one of our original campers. She could at least ask something.
If she doesn't ask a question, we're going to post that picture of her, her favorite picture.
Uh-oh.
I know. I think she's calling my bluff.
Yeah. We'll post it. I'll post
Mary,
it.
Thank you for joining our Totally Not podcast.
Now we're getting, but we do have there's a 20-second delay. It could be it depends on the internet. So it could be like 30 seconds or so. Justine's just being like, I've been on fire with you, Tom Brady. That's a terrible Justine impersonation, but actually it's not that far off. But all right, so we're gonna post Adrian. I'm gonna post that picture on Instagram, probably, and Facebook,
and Twitter, and TikTok, and maybe.
We'll just do a TikTok of it. Just do it like a loop of it. Be like, pow, pow. Maybe Adrian.
Other really great photos of her too.
But yeah, poor Adrian probably was like, I'm gonna just go get some dinner or something like that. She has no idea we're doing this.
She's not really still watching.
No. Yes, Justine, it was terrible and hilarious, but hilarious.
Look at Adrian's texting me. She said she commented.
Oh, she did? It didn't come through. Well, she commented to say that you were smart and accomplished.
Yeah, I think so.
But she didn't
actually, she said,
maybe that was supposed to be a question. So smart and accomplished?
Oh, yeah.
Adrian is very accomplished. Tell us a funny camp memory.
Oh, funny camp memory.
Well, I do have one. It'd be nice to involve Adrian, but I think I will change to the one of traveling. So when we were actually coming back from Idaho camp, and it was myself, we had Josh Kennison, Lizzie Ritter, and I can't remember if we had Keegan. I'm not sure. But anyway, I don't think we did. But so there was a group of us flying back in because we were going to be then. Idaho was always back to back with Maine. So we're flying back we're in Manchester, New Hampshire, getting our bags. And they were like, it was so late. So they're like, can you just go get the car? So I went to go get the car. And I was like, how are you going to get all these bags? Because for those of you who know, we usually travel with a lot of bags. So there was probably, who knows how many bags. There was at least 7 probably bags. And so then as I'm driving up, I'm like, how are they going to get all the bags? There was really one arm between all of them. So it was really quite comical. They're putting, they've got this giant, rolling cart from the airport, piling all the bags on. Of course, there's 1,000 people asking them to help them. But, kind of like that Camp No Limits attitude, like we're all set, we can do it, we can manage it on our own. Very impressively managed to get all the bags into the car. So that was kind of a fun moment and pretty quite funny. But it's interesting that they are able to, I think what I've found is funny is that traveling, so many things that they can prove that they can do. But then it'll be the little things, where you need to like tuck them into bed or something. It's ridiculous sometimes. How our fun little mentors are so independent.
True.
So independent, but then you have to wait on them sometimes.
Right.
A lot.
There was a question about in-person camps. Are we going to have any in-person camps this year? Do you want to give? I know there's probably not much we can say, but do you have a short answer for that question?
Sure. So we've created a COVID committee that's researching and developing looking into all the options that are available and just following CDC guidelines to see what's going to be available and, like potentially which camps might be a potential. So we're holding out hope that we will be able to do something, maybe kind of a hybrid model, depending on what we're allowed to do. In the latter half of the year is our hope. But again, it all depends on what's happening and what the regulations are.
Yeah, I know. I think all of us are fingers and nubs crossed, just like hoping that we can figure that out. But at the same time, we're going to be super safe and super careful. And I think it's, I love this idea of our committee. I think we got really competent people that are really kind of coming up with a whole kind of real thoughtful approach to coming back and making sure everyone's safe.
And we definitely want to go back as soon as we can. I mean, we absolutely, that's what we really want to do. So we're working hard to make sure we can have that happen, but we have to do it the safe way.
Yeah. And and we will. And I think, it's that going back to the beginning, seeing it through. If Mary has to get a saddle for a cow and ride a cow through the country,
like high school,
to have camps, it's gonna happen.
Figure it out. Make it happen.
So you're gonna have the cow pulling like a carriage with like all the bags on there.
Yes.
You're gonna have all like me and Alex sitting in there holding up the bags. Justine just hanging out in a kayak, just cruising in the back. It'll be all good. Kelsey figuring out the routes. It's like, oh my gosh, that's like a Camp No Limits Oregon Trail. I just kind of had the whole thing. We got to figure that out. It's going to be a Camp No Limits Oregon Trail. Alex Sandler, making posters, doing that old postering of the telephone poles as we go by. Sarah McLaughlin getting everybody worked up, getting us all stretched out. I see it happening. Oh, great. And speaking of Kelsey and Alex, who are managing our Camp No Limits Facebook page, we do have those policies updated on our website, and we will update you that on our website. We'll continue to update. And for those, these things we're calling this podcast and some of the other programs we're doing our virtual connections. So we have several different types of things going on with virtual connections. And as Mary mentioned earlier, fantastic new education series that are for healthcare professionals and students. I think it's a great way for us to continue to educate, continue to empower not only our community, but the community that helps support us. Because I think it's important that we have this next generation of occupational therapists, physical therapists, prosthetists, meeting these kids, meeting these families, and getting a sense of this community, because it's something we don't get to see in a clinical setting very often. So, but Miss Leighton, thank you. I know you probably haven't slept since the Super Bowl, so you've just been like dancing, and all of a sudden you're gonna start wearing. She's gonna start wearing that like Pirates, some big sombrero hat. All of a sudden, we're gonna have like she's gonna start building out on the back of that house down there, big pirate deck. Just start shooting cannons at Camp No Limits. All of a sudden, it's just like to celebrate. See it happening. It's gonna be a Buccaneer.
Still a Patriot. Still a Patriot.
All right.
Still a Patriot.
Can't lose the. You take the girl out of the New England, but you can't take the New England out of the girl, I guess, right? It's always going to be the New Englandness.
Always the case.
But thank you, everyone that's hung out. Thank you for everyone watching. We will be back with more amazing interviews with our podcast. Mary, thank you so much, and we will see you guys again soon.